Bills fans, what's up? I know there's a little delay. It tells me live, but when I go back and watch the videos, I'm sitting there like kind of staring aimlessly for a few seconds. You guys probably notice that too. If you happen to rewatch them, start laughing at me because I'm just staring at the camera aimlessly. Anyway, Bills, and some news not about the Bills, but I feel like it'll translate to the Bills. Um, Obviously, the Joe Flacco news today is a big one. Hey, what's up, Trevor? How you doing, man? I felt like it was a good time to do a video. I didn't do a video in a while. Aaron Murray saying that he's gonna. What's up, Eric? I thought you were out somewhere. You're always out at like a pub or something or somewhere. You're always doing something. You're like one of those dudes. You're always doing something. Aaron, Kyler Murray. I want to say Aaron Murray. I don't know why, because I saw him on the AAFL sideline. We'll talk about that too. I thought it was great. I don't know if you guys watch any of the games. I love the fact they just were very transparent about them wanting to help the NFL develop players. I was like, everything that I've been asking for, everything that I've been asking for forever. The league with the biggest rosters, the highest injury rate, of course, because of the nature of the game, that has no developmental league. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Damager. Spencer Long, obviously, get to him. There's so much stuff to touch on. You see, anytime the Bills sign a guy, and I'm just going to go strictly by this regime. I'm not going to go by past. I mean, I could. I remember when the Bills signed Lorenzo Alexander. Everybody was like, yeah, just a guy. He's just Jag. He was a Jag. He's just a guy. Special teams, depth, dude, whatever. You know, Zoe ends up making Pro Bowl, leading the team in sacks, and let's let the guy play. I mean, I always say that, with Spencer Long, let him play, let him get healthy. The guy was trying to snap balls with a broken hand, for Christ's sake. But I will give him this: they didn't take him out of the lineup. They moved him over to right guard or left guard, one of the guard positions, but he still was in there. I think he's a clear replacement for Ryan Groy. He does everything Ryan Groy does in terms of playing center, both guard spots. Maybe he starts. Maybe he's the right guard. Maybe he's the left guard. Hey, Christian, what's up, man? So we'll see where it goes. Guy hasn't, he just signed his contract yesterday. This team needed players, and I'm not. A lot of Bills fans are crying for this guy. I've never seen him ranked highly up there. I never seen him ranked highly up there, but Bills fans banging the table for Matt Paradis. I mean, I'm not interested in paying a marginal center $8 million just because he's the best, so-called best center on the market. I'm just not interested in doing that. A guy who's going to be 30 years old going into the season, I'm not interested in paying $8+ million for a guy like that. Sorry, not sorry. I don't feel like doing that. I don't see where there's a lot of really, really good offensive linemen in free agency that you have to break the bank for. I just don't. I don't want them to. I want them to say what and they've done that. They have done that. This regime has done it from the day they came in till today. They've had a plan and they've stuck to it. Whether it works or doesn't work is remain to be seen. But they've had the gumption and the balls to stick to it. Unlike regimes that need to get that quick buzz, need to do something to hype up the fan base, something. Something. We know all about those type of regimes. Yeah, Christian. Yeah, Mitch Morse. He's a solid guy. We'll see what he commands. I mean, he could command money. He's been on a very good offense in KC. He's you never know. He might want big money. He might want a lot of money. Now, you always got to remember, do you want to sign a guy for big money that might not deserve it? Answer, he doesn't do anything for me, bro. He's been banged up the last couple of years. His production's not been good. Maybe a guy like Shaquille Barrett from Denver. He could play the edge. He can rush the passer. He's been buried behind. I mean, he jumped ahead of Shane Ray finally on the depth chart, but he was buried behind guys like Chubb, DeMarcus Ware before that. Obviously, Vaughn Miller. They don't really do a heavy rotation like the Bills do on the defensive line. So he's a guy I feel like, maybe mid-tier guy that they could pick up. It'll obviously all correlate to what they do, translate to what they do in April, which we're always thinking about. I'm always thinking about. I love living my days, but it's kind of one of those things where, like, can I just fast forward to April, whatever already? But nah, I use it as an incentive to do certain things throughout my day, like work out and eat well. And it's like, if I do these things, I'm going to enjoy this day. That's kind of how I mind fuck myself to do certain things that might seem labor intensive. It's weird. It's a masochist in me. But anyway, re-signed Lafayette Pitts, depth, special teams guy. Never really noticed him when he had to play secondary. I didn't notice him getting picked on a lot. Didn't notice him making a lot of plays. But then again, when, you know what they say, when you're not hearing about your corners and your offensive line, that means they're playing well. And I still, as much as I look at this draft and as with all the news about the quarterbacks, I don't think the Flacco thing takes Jesse James, tight end. I think they get a veteran, but this class of tight ends, especially the top two guys, I think will go in the first round, which is rare when you see. Let's just put it this way: if Hayden Hurst can be a first-round pick like he was last year, T.J. Hawkinson, who I fucking love, who I absolutely love. I like Croft. That's a good one. Even if you want to buy, there's another guy there also, Hewitt. He's in, I believe, in Indianapolis. He was formerly with them. And if you want to buy low, maybe a one-year deal for Tyler Eifert. I know he's coming off a pretty bad injury. Maybe you buy low on him, see what he does. But I definitely, they need to add a guy there, a veteran. And because I think Daboll, if he has his druthers, which he obviously does, this is a very tight end centric offense. This is a lot of different, the tight ends are very much utilized. I mean, we saw that with the lack of talent they had at tight end this year. I mean, they used a lot of Kroom, a lot of Logan Thomas, and a lot of Clay when he was healthy, which he most of the times wasn't. But Noah Fant, those two guys are going to be first-round picks. They're going to be undeniably first-round picks for me. Those guys, Hawkinson is better at everything than Fant is. I feel like he's a better blocker. He's just as much the receiver. And the Bills have never had a stud tight end in the history of their franchise. They have never had a freak. They've never had a stud. So if they, again, one of these moves I'll talk about hypothetical, if they trade down to like the high teens or the low 20s and take that guy, I cry not. Because I still think they're going to trade down, especially with the news of Murray all in on football. He gives back his baseball money. He got wind, or he's gotten news from pretty well-placed people, because that's how these things happen. Things don't happen in a vacuum. He's gotten wind that he's going to be a first-round pick. Like, you know how they invite certain guys to the combine, not the combine, I'm sorry, to the draft, because they pretty much know, okay, teams are like, well, there's enough teams that have this guy at a certain place where this guy is going to go in the first round. It's a very rare case where a guy doesn't, and he ends up going to the top of the sixth. Yeah, I think an owner, Trevor, is going to snap his fingers and say, hey, I want this guy. An owner's going to get a hard on draft night, push the envelope, and say, hey, I want this guy. Hell, we almost watched Jerry Jones do it with Johnny Manziel. Cleveland did it several picks down the line, but we almost saw that happen before Steven takes the card out of his hand on live television. So that's how it happens, man. Guys, these old dudes get saucy in the draft room. They see these names. They see they're humans too, man. And when you don't have a personnel department that can overrule an owner, or an owner that says, hey, this is your show, this is your thing, I'm just here to watch, things can get ugly, man. Yeah, I mean, outside of Haskins, really none of them does it for me, man. I'm right with you. I cringe. I cringe at thinking about wanting to have to take a quarterback in this draft, but this draft to me, it's not like last year's draft where there was two, like you, it was, to me last year was you had a strong quarterback class, a really strong quarterback class. Let's see 4, 5, 6 years down the line, maybe it's a generational one, but as of right now, a pretty good one. I'd say it's a pretty good one. Early returns, and you had three really good players, two generational maybe players, but any other. Bradley Chubb had 12 sacks. 12 and a half sacks. He was a really good player for Denver. I mean, obviously Barkley, who was the rookie of the year in multiple places, and Quentin Nelson was phenomenal. So you had true studs. I mean, Bosa, I mean, I'll be honest with you, he's very, very talented, but him not playing for most of the year, being injured, that's going to like maybe turn some teams off a little bit. He's still going to be taken in the top 3, but I think that's going to turn some teams off. That's going to like, well, this guy kind of threw in a towel on his team. And how much do we Derwin James, who was taken in the teens, but he's still a very, very good player and lived up to more of his potential that he showed in college, because he had an off year his last year of college. His sophomore year, he was really, really good. He was phenomenal. But to me, this is a depth draft. Like, you don't have to bend over backwards for anything at 9 if you're the Bills. You don't have to be like, oh my God, we have to get our linemen. We have to do this. We have to do that. I do mocks every other day. I'm not going to lie. Entertainment purposes only, just playing around, shooting this shit with myself. Ed Oliver, to me, still seems like a logical guy, not just because of position need. I think you can move him anywhere along the defensive line in multiple situations. Even on rundowns, you could play him on the end. On obvious pass downs, you could kick him inside. The guy, granted, he kind of did the same thing Bosa did, but let's be honest, he was a guy that was considered. His talent speaks for itself. If you just watch him, he's crazy. I saw a lot of the pics of Metcalf, and that really was him, DK Metcalf. He's training at Exos, which is in Florida. I know he was out in Arizona for a little while. He's kind of gone back and forth between those places. And he's a freak. His father, if you guys don't remember, his father was Terrence Metcalf. Was an offensive lineman, kind of reserve offensive lineman for the Bears back in the early 2000s. He was an interior offensive lineman, played at Ole Miss also, was never quite the prospect that Metcalf is. You see Metcalf, that's why it's going to be fun to watch the combine, because I think the way these guys run, the way these guys interview, and their meds, especially him, coming off neck surgery, is going to dictate a lot of where they go. Nobody rises and falls right now. You see how they haven't played games. These guys who are who they are, ostensibly, they are who they are. Nobody's rising and falling right now. So there's no games being played. The talking heads are going to talk. Hell, I'm a talking head on here, but I'm not, I can't speak in absolutes today about something that happens 2+ months down the line. It's fun to speculate, obviously. I always say they should preface every mock draft before they put it out as, let's be honest, this is for entertainment purposes only. But I want to see how Metcalf runs, because he's a guy, he could blow up the combine. And you could see that guy all of a sudden, like, holy shit, this guy at this height, this weight, can move like this. Let's see how he runs routes. Let's see how he interviews. His dad, a former NFL player, I'm sure he's schooled to what to expect. Bills kind of like that with they like physical freaks. Let's be honest. I mean, I'm sure Tremaine Edmonds interviewed very, very well. Allen obviously interviewed very, very well. You could say that. And how the hell does Mike McCagnon still have a job here with the Jets in New Jersey? And how the hell did Hackenberg play in the AFL last week and look as bad as he did? He made Matt Sims, who was awful for the Atlanta Legends. I mean, he was terrible. Former Bills third string quarterback. He didn't even make the roster because that horrendous spinning backwards fumble throw he did in Detroit. You guys all remember that one with the proverbial fourth preseason game against the Lions, which we all rue. It was a horrible moment. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know how that guy was. He's terrible, and the guy who picked him should have been fired. But that's their problem. They're in the Bills division, and if they want to continue to go that route, go right ahead, enjoy that. But I don't know if they like Oliver or not. To digress back to the 9th overall pick, but if they go back and accumulate, I think this is a depth draft. They already have 10 draft picks, and if they accumulate more, I think they'll pay it forward to next year. Maybe one withstanding this year. Probably they would like to get another one in the top 75. So if it's a high third, second, that's awesome. And then one next year. I'm not saying a first next year, but if it happens to be, great. Because if you're going back from 9 to like the 20s, you're getting a first round pick next year. Let's be honest. That's first round pick movement. And if somebody's jumping up that high, irregardless, it's probably going to be for a quarterback. If it's Murray, it's Locke. I mean, maybe, who knows? Maybe the San Diego Chargers finally want to get a guy in place for Phillip Rivers, for example, and they want to start having this guy get groomed under Rivers for at least a year. Who knows? Maybe there's always shocks. There's always shocks. Daniel Snyder, he's a wild card. Maybe he sends the Redskins up from 15 to 9 for the Bills to get something. Yeah, they get desperate, dude. And you know, that was the frustrating thing all the years being a Bills fan, is a team that needed a quarterback so bad never acted desperate at all on draft night. That's the thing that would piss us. I think he might, man. I think he might, and it's early. It just seems like this kid has gotten something tangible that says he's going to be a first round pick, and teams like the symbolism of that. That was one of the things that always irked me about EJ. I didn't like the pick at all. I know it's easy for me to say that today. I thought that it's crazy enough. I thought that they were going to take Matt Barkley. I'm like, if I had to choose one, it'd be Matt Barkley. You can go back to the videos that year and watch. I thought it was going to be Matt Barkley. I watched plenty of EJ because I'm a Florida Gator, and I never was scared of EJ Manuel as a Florida Gator. I fan, and I was like, this guy's not good. He's not good. I was just, you invent one. Sometimes these teams, they get desperate and they invent one. I think Daniel Jones is underrated. I see a lot of talent that Drew Lock has, because when he played against Florida this year, who has a very, very good defense, and we saw what that defense did against Michigan in the bowl game. They were amazing. And Drew Lock had a really good game against that team, but he's erratic. He has his times. I'm not a fan of Will Grier at all. I think anytime you throw 50 touchdown passes against elite competition, like Haskins did in that conference against that talent, hey, bro, what's up, man? That's all good, man. Life gets in the way, Matthew. We all get busy. I know you guys, if you guys are up in New York, Western New York, the weather's nuts up there. Yeah, see, Joe, I don't want either of those guys, man. I don't want old guys that have injuries. I was never a fan of James in Miami. Miami's really never been nothing special to me in terms of him and per se. There's players on Miami I like. Rashad Jones, I love. I like Kenyon Drake. I always thought he was a really, really good player. They had a tight end that, him getting hurt, but I liked him for a little while. I thought he was good. I actually like Kenny Stills. I really like Kenny Stills. Yeah, he's a right guard, but a right tackle. But again, I just don't think they're going to spend a lot of money. I think they're going to spend. See, I like Robinson because that's a guy, he was a pick that's been kind of moved around, and I watched a lot of Cleveland last year, and when he took over at left tackle, he played really well. and he's a very physical run blocker. He's a freak athlete. I don't know what his FBI is, his football intelligence. I've heard it's not really high. But who knows? Maybe he's turned a corner. Maybe he's gotten better. But Woods, see, to me, Wood was a different issue because Wood was a guy that had been in the Bills facility forever. He was well respected. He was a leader. They viewed him as something more than just a guy they're bringing in. They viewed him as, this is our leader on offense. This is our veteran. He's a captain. He's tenured. He was a face of the team and the community and the organization. So they viewed him. See, a lot of these teams, when they sign these players, sometimes we think of them just on the field. He's a different kind of sign, like a guy like Kyle Williams. You continue to give Kyle Williams those one-year deals at his advanced age. Still a solid player, but he symbolizes so much more for you. Also, it's like Lorenzo. Lorenzo Alexander is kind of that guy now. Fred Jackson was that guy for several years prior. I don't know if he's roided up. He's just a really big, solid guy. I mean, he's a linebacker. He's 6'3", 230. And when you're like 5%, 6% body fat, and the reason those guys get rocked up like this now, this is what happens when you lift weights. When you start training with your team for football activities in the heat of summer, because think of it, this is like winter workouts. What you generally do as a football player is you lift weights and put on anywhere between 10 to 12 pounds of lean mass. And that's very hard to do. So when these guys are in their early 20s and their testosterone is naturally high, they can do that because they're eating well, they're training, they're under, their agents have them under the best of best supervision. But when they get into the NFL setting, they start doing more football stuff, which is a lot more running, calisthenic, core, center gravity movement. They start to shed that weight. They start to shed some of it because you're not lifting the same load or the same volume, the same rate as the season goes on at all. You're lifting just to stay strong. It's not an alactic sport, football, but you're lifting just to get a good blood flow, to get a good pump, some hypertrophy in your muscles. Sorry to go on this long-winded soliloquy, but I love nutrition and exercise and all this kind of stuff. So it's a different kind of lift. You lose weight because you're playing football for what, 7 months with preseason, with season. So the guy will probably end up being like in the low 220s after all said and done. They just and like Eric says, they're working out for combine drills. They want to look good with their shirt off, of course. They want to be aesthetically look the best that they can, but they also want to be able to be, as peak as they can be to do all the drills that they do because they're training for drills. I like a lot of the talent in the draft for offensive line, and I don't think you got to go high because I'm not a fan. I'm not as big a fan of the talent that's supposedly up there as I am as the talent in the middle. I think the talent in the middle is just as good as the one in the first round. I think they're going to try to find a pass rusher at 9, and if they trade back and one happens to fall to them there that they like, they'll take them, or they'll take best player available. I have a couple of flyer positions that I think that they might take. One is a wide receiver. I know you like that. And the other is a tight end. I think that if they trade down into the teens, I could see a guy like Marquise Brown being the ticket. If you guys think of I'm trying to comp him. T.Y. Hilton, Deshaun Jackson in his prime, Santana Moss in his prime. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, is electric. He's electric. He's the kind of receiver that just takes the top off of a defense. He's the kind of receiver that teams have to game plan for because he can get behind you fast. The Darrell Williams, again, I'm just not a big fan of shelling out a lot of money in free agency to offensive linemen. I know it was a prior regime. I've seen the Bills do that in the past and get burned. When they gave a shit ton of money, two of the richest contracts in franchise history at the time, to Derek Dockery and Langston Walker, and they ended up cutting those guys in 2 years. They were terrible contracts. And then they go and use two high picks to try to fix the offensive line in Levitri and Eric Wood. But how'd they get the Eric Wood pick? They traded a Hall of Fame left tackle in Jason Peters. So I've seen them go around this circle jerk before, again, prior regimes. So I'm just build something tangible. You don't have to pay. There's no panacea out there. It needs to be a group effort. And the new offensive line coach and Dable are going to have a say in it, who they like. Obviously, McDermott's going to have a say. Bean's going to have a say. So we're going to have to see what type of offensive lineman they like, because I think it's going to be a different one than we've seen with Juan Castillo. Oh, yeah, they do. They need development. And I'm not saying that they're going to sign dudes, man. Free agency period hasn't even started yet. But the Spencer Long signing is, to me, you have only four healthy linemen under contract that have, some experience playing. Ike Butker, he played in a little bit. Wyatt Teller got a lot of starts second half of the season. Bodine's injured. Rehab from a broken leg. I don't know if they're going to keep him, but he's under contract. Dukas is as good as cut, even though he's still on the roster. He's as good as gone. And you have Deion Dawkins. And the way the organization talked and he talked, he feels like he has to re-earn his starting left tackle job. He doesn't think that it's just his job to walk into anymore. And the way the organization, when you heard both McDermott and Bean talk about it, they didn't sound sure either. So this offensive line is totally, again, I don't think we can even pencil anybody into any positions right now, anywhere. Groy was horrible. Bodine, the offensive line got slightly better when Bodine came in, but Groy, I used to feel was decent. He was just awful. It's just he's good as gone too. He's an unrestricted free agent. The team's likely not to bring him back. Who knows with Dawkins? I think he's a tackle, whether it be right or left, and I think it's more valuable to have a tackle. But who knows? Who knows where he ends up? I think Teller has some ability. He's a young player. He needs to be developed, and I feel like that's why Bobby Johnson was brought in. They feel like they need a guy who can help develop these players. Are young. That's why Chad Hall was promoted to wide receiver coach. That's why I was so steadfast about putting it out on Twitter a month after, right when they fired Robisky. I was like, I knew from what I heard that Hall was the guy who was working with all the young wide receivers after practice and late in practices. That it was Chad Hall doing that stuff. It was Chad Hall working with the Fosters and the Isaiah McKenzies and guys of that ilk, getting them repped up. Trent Brown's a possibility. Who knows what kind of money he wants? They ran a lot of power there. Brady gets the ball out quick. Maybe some of his deficiencies are mass. He's a huge guy who can move. Oh, of course, it's our biggest weakness. You got to build him. Yeah, John Miller just went in the tank, man. Again, I just don't think you bring these guys back. I think they want to start fresh along the line, and just we have to trust what they do. Free agency really hasn't officially started yet. We're today a month out. The new league year starts March 13th. So as of right now, we're talking. We'll start hearing about deals. We're going to start hearing about deals. Who knows? I mean, look at the Flacco deal. The Flacco deal happened like that. Dorsey has a long history as a quarterback coach. He worked with Cam most of his career. Culley, I think he did a good job, but they promoted him from wide receivers coach. He had no prior history working with quarterbacks, but I felt like Allen did well. So we'll see what Dorsey does. He's a quarterback. He played in the NFL. He played at a top program in Miami. He won a national title, took a team to another national title. He did not have the physical skill set or the gifts that Josh Allen does. He did not have a strong arm. If you remember him playing, he was not a strong arm quarterback. He was a dink and dunk thrower. Dorsey didn't get fired. I remember on Twitter I put it out why. A lot of these things you hear. Similar story with the Jets. Greg Williams was not happy that Gase didn't want to bring Blake Williams on, his son. And to acquiesce and appease him, they hired Blake Williams as a defensive assistant only. Same thing in Carolina last year. The only way Norv Turner was going to take that job as offensive coordinator is if his son, Scott Turner, was the quarterback coach. So obviously, Dorsey is showing the door. And that's this league. That's why when people, they say they act like there's all these Carolina people in Buffalo, I see just a handful. Every team does that. Brian Flores brought a bunch of New England guys with him. This guy in Detroit, Patricia, brought more New England guys with him. The GM had brought more New England guys. I mean, this happens in the NFL, and people act like it's a nepotism, but it's a league of familiarity and comfort too. You bring trusted people with you. Sometimes you bring people, and those people might have their own agendas. They might not have your team's best interest at heart. They have their own self-serving interest at heart. They're looking outside to get a promotion or to go elsewhere. Look what happens with John DeFilippo. They feel like he's thinking about a head coaching job rather than doing his job as OC. Roman gets fired because Rex felt threatened that he might take his job, and he had never worked with him before. And so he was the first one out the door, and he promotes his longtime friend, Anthony Lynn. We saw that happen. It happens. Yeah, and that's going to take a while, Trevor. We're going to see a few years of that, and then you'll start to see guys. And what I would like to see is that the Bills and other NFL teams are able to put 3, 4, maybe even 5 guys on these AAFL teams, and we could actually watch some Bills practice squad players, maybe get some development. Hell, look at Fred Jackson. Fred Jackson's a guy that had to go around to these smaller leagues that sometimes necessarily weren't affiliated with the NFL. James Harrison, same thing, had to go to the World League, had to go to NFL Europe. Cameron Wake went to NFL Europe. Then he went up to the CFL. There's a lot of there's these guys that this happens with. And sometimes they slip through the cracks. They're late bloomers, and it all turns into my number one running back. I love the running back class this year because I don't feel like you have to take one high. I'm more middle round guy, volume guy. I like a few of them. I love Montgomery. I love David Montgomery. I like Miles Sanders a lot. I love those two running backs. I love the way they run. They run with a lot of toughness. They're very decisive inside one cut go guys, bang, or they hit the hole hard. They're very decisive, and they're very tough runners. They're not afraid to just run through a tackle, and they have the ability to run around a tackle too. I'm a big fan of those. Haven't really looked at him yet. I really haven't looked at him yet. So I'm the same with the tight end class. The 2 top guys are really good. I don't know about the Alabama guy, Irv Smith Jr. Saw his father play in the league. Wasn't that great. Not saying he won't be good, but so I'm just leery of Alabama guys in general. I think they're just such a machine. Downhill runners. I don't. The offense or the defense? I think the offense. I think the I don't know now, because you've got to remember this guy was the run game coordinator too, Castillo. So he was the offensive line coach. Maybe they changed things up. I like Devin White as a freak also, man. Who knows? Maybe they draft him and they allow Zoe to focus on special teams and pass rush more. And he's already your built-in replacement for Alexander. I've mentioned that on here before. Offense. I like those type of runners. I like who Miles Sanders reminds me of? He runs like Marshawn Lynch, and he doesn't have a lot of mileage on him because Penn State. who was there, they had Barkley 2 years. He was behind Barkley as his backup. And he doesn't have a lot of wear on the tires. He's only got like 270 career carries in college. Same thing with the Bama guys. They don't have a lot of carries. They split carries. Najee Harris, and Jacobs, they all had like 100 carries apiece. They don't have a lot of wear. But conversely, Montgomery, he's got a lot more carries, but I still like him. I still like him. Yeah, that's why I love the pick, is because you can just get a guy. You can get a guy and say, we're not desperate. We don't, oh my God, we need, I mean, the Bills need wide receiver help. Let's not get that twisted. They've needed that for 2 years. They've needed that. This whole time the regime has needed wide receiver help. They need tight end help now, and they need offensive line help. They need running back help. There's skill position wise, all of our running backs I feel like are replaceable. I feel like all but 2 or maybe 3, if you want to be generous, to Isaiah McKenzie, wide receivers are replaceable. And I feel like they like Kroom, but the other 2 guys are as good as gone. The offensive line, we all know what the state that's in. So this team needs a lot of help, and the more picks you have, the less money you have to spend in free agency. Fool's gold. I call it fool's gold. This is free agency is fool's gold, because you sign a guy 1 or 2 years and then boom, he's cut. Look at Vinny Curry, just got cut from Tampa Bay, signed like a $22 million deal. Spencer Long, he signed like a $6.5 million deal, 4 years with the Jets, and they release him after 1 year. Free agency is a trap, man. You can get your dick caught in a mousetrap in free agency, and it'll hurt you down the line. So I don't think they're going to do that. You're not going to trade out one old running back for another. I think they feel like Shady can still bring something in turn. I just think they feel like the offensive line was just that horrific. And we saw the offensive line was just that horrific. Can he carry the load on his own anymore? No. But I feel like, if you guys remember, when Thurman was late in his career, he had a backup running back by the name of Derrick Holmes. And Derrick Holmes really kept him in the league, kept Thurman Thomas playing at a good level for another 2 years, because Holmes did all the dirty work and did all the nasty stuff. And Duke's a guy you have to trade for, though. They just signed him to a decent deal also, so he's not a guy they're just going to – I would wait for him to get cut, but he's more of a receiver than he is runner. I want runners. I want guys who can get tough yards in between the tackles and make yards after contact. I don't want them going down at first contact. I want them to be able to lower their pads and put somebody on their ass. Miles Sanders, to me, does that. And I like Golden Tate. To me, again, he's an older guy. He might want money. And he did not do well in Philadelphia. They struggled with him. He didn't even get 10 yards a catch. 27. He looked like he got lost in the shuffle there. And I'm just not in love with that idea. I'm not in love with the Golden Tate idea. I want, 31. He's an older guy. I'm just not interested in those type of guys for this team. I'm looking for like no older than 27-year-old dudes that maybe weren't starters on their team, or they were fringe starters. Those are the kind of guys I look at and say, hey, maybe this guy, maybe that guy. I'm not interested in guys like, big splash, because there is really no big splash free agency. Even Terrell Williams, I'm a little leery of him, the wide receiver. Maybe they revisit John Brown. I don't know. His production did tail off when Lamar Jackson was the quarterback after Flacco got he got injured, and they just went to Lamar Jackson, and they weren't throwing the ball as much. They were the more run-centric offense. Maybe they revisit him. They have the money. They have a proven big arm quarterback that'll push the ball down the field. Maybe they revisit that. Humphreys, I swear, I think where do you think a guy like him ends up? Perfect. Thanks for bringing him up. Where do you think Adam Humphreys ends up? It's obvious. fucking New England, I swear. A white wide receiver who's a shifty slot receiver who returns punts. Also, he works hard, doesn't make a lot of fucking noise. He's not a diva. And all their other wide receivers are 30. Hogan's a free agent. He's 30. I know you guys would love to see Chris Hogan back. I know Chris Hogan was always a Bills fan favorite. I don't know. I don't care if he comes back. I wouldn't want him back. But I know Amendola is like 32. Amendola is not young. So no, their whole offense isn't. They have a pretty good African American contingent on in their offense. The running backs. I mean, they have their guys they like in their system, and they work very, very well. You know, it's just I think a lot of times they get fluffed up by Brady, but then there's times there's talent there, and they do work hard and they don't make a fuss. They just play their role and they just go forward. But back to the Bills, yeah, there's no receiver. I just sit there and like, God, the Bills have to have this guy, and we know guys get released too. Guys get released, guys get cut. And we'll see where they go. And if they're able to trade down, I don't think it happens till draft night, and we see what they can get. Obviously, it'll be a pick on day 2, and maybe a pick or 2 next year. So we won't know till the following day what they're able to do, if they're able to trade down at all. Hogan, Edelman, Gronk, Devlin, Burkhead, Trent Brown, Shaq Mason, Marcus Cannon, Sony Michel, James White, Cordero Patterson. Come on. Cobb's been injured a lot lately, Damager. He's been injured a lot. Hasn't really done much, especially with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. He's lost a lot of his quicks. He's had a lot of like weird leg, foot injuries. Yeah, and he's almost 30 also. Again, there's a lot of that's why I feel like the draft is so important, to have picks between 2 even down to 6, the 6th round, because there's so many intriguing guys that I like. A guy like Penny Hart, a guy like from a small school, Georgia Southern, small, shifty, returns punts, returns kicks, does a lot of crazy stuff, was able to separate for them. There's tons of guys that I feel like, you know, he was almost impossible to cover at the Senior Bowl, and he was a late invitee. There's a ton of guys that are just intriguing to me in the draft. If they draft a good receiving tight end like a Hawkinson, who's he can split out like a wide receiver. I've seen him play in the backfield. I've seen him play on the offensive line as a wide tight end, traditional tight end, and I've seen him split out wide, inside at slot, put his hand in the dirt as a fullback. He's crazy versatile. There's all whether it's offensive line, defensive line, areas of need for the Bills. There's so many intriguing guys I find in the middle rounds that I want the Bills to have as many of those picks as possible to try to fill the team. I don't want them, you know, if they happen to spend $40 million in free agency, I'm great with that. Granted, they still have to cut some guys, open up some space, and it's just so early because free agency hasn't started yet. Thanks for all you guys coming in. I appreciate it. I had written down some stuff that I wanted to talk about, but I kind of went off on our tangent here, which I kind of like doing. No, I really don't. I don't think that they're going to go after. I think that they've shown they're going to do what they're going to do, because this regime has showed me that they're willing to stick by what they say. They don't say things for effect. They say things because they mean them. Like when Bean comes out and says, we're picking at 9 this year, whereas last year we were picking at 22 and 21. But you get the sense he much rather would have been picking at 9 last year, so they didn't have to trade everything to get up. But this year they're picking at 9. But he says we don't necessarily have to pick at 9 this year. That automatically says the pick is for sale. We don't have to be here. We're here because we're here. But if you guys want to be here for us, you can for a price. And they say they're gonna the head coach and the GM on the same day use the word judicious spending, and then they say it again at the Senior Bowl another month down the line. So I think that again, damagers. I think they went down that road, and I don't think they're going to go down it again. I don't think they're going to go down the Carolina player too much road. I don't. I think they know that, I don't know if he's the kind of guy. He's got good touchdown production. He's still young. He is still a young guy. I don't think he's a number one. I don't even know if he's a number two. Maybe he's a red zone guy. So I think they want guys who can make impact plays, big plays. Even though he did, help them go to a Super Bowl, he's one of their leading receivers that year. A few other things I didn't talk about. A few players getting their combine invites revoked. I know there was one player. He was the same player. Jeffrey Simmons gets his combine invite revoked. What a hard week this guy did because of a prior assault he had on a woman. Apparently there was a video. They don't know. And then word yesterday comes out he tears his ACL. And, he's one of those guys that just kind of has to sit, wait and see. Maybe somebody drafts him for next year, gives him a redshirt year, knowing that they can have his rights for another year anyway. But and then Jalen Ferguson, a guy who set the NCAA sack record from Louisiana Tech, wasn't too good at the Senior Bowl, even though it's hard to glean lots of things. Some guys get caught in the wash. They get better when they get set with their teams and their schemes. A lot of guys kind of thrive in that just throw me in there and see what happens type of environment the Senior Bowl brings. He gets his combine invite taken back because of a prior incident that he had. And then Kareem Hunt signs with the Browns, which is a very weird thing. They seem like a team that was going in the right direction, rebuilding, but he's a guy, he might not suit up for them at all. Might suit up week 10, week 12. Then what do you got there? And you got him under contract for another year as a restricted free agent. And we know this about the NFL. Passes you by quick. In one day, you're the best thing since sliced bread, then out the other. Wow, that guy, God, I remember that guy. He was good for a few years. There's a lot of guys like that, and I could name tons of them. You're just like, oh, where'd that guy go? This guy was a little flash in the pan guy, great. Eddie Lacy, one of those guys. Wow, he was great. Where is he now? Ate his way out of the league. But I think that this free agency period, we're going to see them try to spend as wisely as possible. And maybe when we see some of the deals like a Paradis signs or a Morse signs or maybe a Roger Saffold signs, maybe even a guy like Darrell Williams, you're going to be like, wow, I wouldn't pay that for him. Or because I don't think that you want to get yourself buried into that again, because that's another thing being said. We don't want to go back into cap hell or cap jail. We did this to get out of this, not to get ourselves back in it. Keep that in mind. So before everybody gets their, gets their free agency draft muscles flexed and pumped, I don't think and I don't want them to, because I've seen the Bills spend some bad free agency money. First few years of Mario Williams' deal was nice. There was a few bad years of that deal that the Bills had to eat. Not good. What's up, Snarl? How you doing, man? Thanks for dropping in. I don't know if you guys want to keep going, or I'm going to wrap this up. Yeah, they're not high picks, Trevor. You're right. The in New England's guys are guys they trade for. It's funny that the guy that they just drafted in the first round got injured, and that's who they trade. That's why they traded for Trent Brown when Jarius Wynn got injured. But Marcus Cannon, to Joe Tooney, second round pick. David Andrews is a low, like 5th or 6th round pick, center from Georgia, and Shaq Mason was like a 4th or 5th round pick. That you've got to pick guys that fit what you do, and they run a lot of different kind of run schemes. They do run power. They run some trap concepts. They run some counter. But their runners have to be decisive. The runners, they don't play around with dancers. Those runners, they have to hit the hole. The running backs he has to hit the hole. But yeah, if you get guys who fit what you do and they're well coached and they're well developed, and That old guy, Skarnecchia in New England, he does that. Hopefully Johnson can do that for the Bills. Coaching matters. We admit that. Well, you know what? Somebody else said that I think it was Joe. You got to respect the Pats. Snarl, you bring it up. Look, the Patriots have had their system, their scheme, their coaching staff in place for almost 20 years. Think about that. However old any of you guys are in there, the Patriots have had their scheme, the style of player that they like, and their system and their scheme rotating on a loop for 20 years. Where the Bills, let's just talk about the Bills. The Bills have had 8 different head coaches, multiple coordinators, multiple schemes. Just recently, up until 2017, they fired the scouting department, brought in all new scouts because those prior scouts had been there, but those scouts are constantly getting different guys for different schemes. There's nothing that this is what I mean. You have to, if you don't have anything and you're constantly just turning the door, hey, what's behind door number 2? What's behind door number 3? Because everybody wants to just jump ship after a couple of years or a bad year. And New England, let's be honest, they've had the greatest quarterback in NFL history. That buys you a lot. They win a lot of games. So when you're winning, and I've seen picks that they've made that were shit. Lawrence Maroney was not a good first-round pick. Chad Jackson was a terrible first-round pick. Antonio Garcia is an offensive lineman they took 2 years ago. Never played a game for them. Was terrible. They released him. Derek Rivers is a second round. He's been terrible. He's done nothing for them. I could name tons. But when they go out and they find veterans, they're able to go where they're good is they're able to go find veterans off of teams that help them and fit what they do after they've seen them in the league for a few years, like a Kyle Van Noy, for example. Perfect example. Mike Vrabel, who played 4 years with the Patriots, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then the Patriots pick him up, and then he integrates into their system well. You know, and Belichick is what he is. He's got the acumen. He knows what he's looking for. But as far as drafting goes, he's not the greatest drafter. He's not. Adrian Clem is a guy he drafted. It was not great. He was their first-round pick in the Brady year. He was not a good player. Okay? I remember when he was with the Cleveland Browns. He drafted a fullback 9th overall. Tommy Vardell from Stanford. Look it up. So he has his faults, but what he's able to do is find veterans and guys. And there's some guys he's hit on. He's taken flyers on guys that had injury concerns, like a Gronkowski. You know, he had the back surgery. You know, teams were kind of leery of his his durability even then. You know, he's come in, been the greatest tight end ever the league's ever seen, but he's also had the greatest quarterback the league's ever seen throwing the ball. You know, and they've been in the same scheme. They don't change offensive schemes. This is who they are. They morph what they do, but basically their concepts and everything stay the same. I mean, they have players in their defense that are talented. I mean, Devin McCourty is a talented player. I mean, as much as we don't like Stephon Gilmore, he's a really good player when he's got his head in it. I think he has some mental lapses out there. Kyle Van Noy's versatile. They just have tough guys who play selfless football. They don't have bitchers and moaners who are worried about their stats. And when they have guys who are bitchers and moaners and worry about their stats and the ball, they get rid of them. Like Randy Moss, they get rid of them. When guys don't fit what they do, they get rid of them. They don't hang on to guys for extra long periods of time, disrupt their culture. They don't do that. And that's what other teams do. Look what happened to Pittsburgh this year. All the talent they have. And this is what McDermott means when he talks about culture. It's something more than people think, like a bunch of nice guys. It's not about nice guys. It's about guys that maybe they're nasty and they have an edge, but when it comes to playing football, they're selfless. They can be nasty guys and have an edge and play physical and be mean. But when it comes to a team, there's a different – everybody thinks like it's choir boys. It's not choir boys. Look at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had Pro Bowl everywhere. Juju Smith, Hall of Fame quarterback, really solid offensive line, even a good rookie running back. Antonio Brown most of the year. they don't make the playoffs. You know, they don't make the playoffs. Hunt, yeah, I mean, the Browns signed Hunt. He messes up one more time, he never plays again. He might not play till week 10, week 12. So again, let's go back to the Bills. I know everybody wants to talk about what they're going to do free agency wise, draft wise, but this is fun. This is why I like this. I like this interaction. It's a lot of back and forth. It's not just me talking to the camera when I write stuff down here on my phone to try to talk about like certain topics. It's just us talking, like we're all sitting around having a conversation, and that's what I like. If I could have done this when I first started, that would have been great. If I could have did a live vid after that Dallas Monday night game in 07, man, the shit I would have said, I would have been cursing. It was terrible. Is the Jets center any good? Well, he's a center guard. He could start. He could be a depth guy. As of today, I don't know. I don't know what he's going to look like in the Bills scheme. I know that he played with Jeremiah Searles. Bill Callahan, I'm sorry, coached him in Washington. He was a third-round pick, so he has some pedigree. The Jets did give him a big contract, so he had value on the free agent market. He had a rough season last year because he had a broken hand he tried to play through. And when you're trying to block 300-pound men that are violently coming at you with a broken hand, I'm assuming that is not a good thing for you or that broken hand. And your play is probably going to suffer. I feel bad, man, because I watched it and I wanted to jump through the screen. Like you see those videos of fans freaking out and breaking their televisions and shit. That's what I wanted to do after that Monday night game. Yeah. I don't, you know what? I didn't cry because, again, I seen them. Nah, they gave him a 3-year, four and he'll be on the Bills roster this year, I think. I think he'll be on the team as whether it's as a swing guy or a spot starter. I think he's on the roster. And that's fine. And you don't have when the guy was signed, I saw Bills fans on Twitter, because there's just Bills fans, they hyperventilate over every little thing. If the guy's name wasn't, what's up, Al? How you doing, bro? It's been a while. Alex, I know who you are, bro. If the Bills didn't sign Jonathan Ogden, Jermani Dawson, Steve Hutchinson, Larry Allen, take your pick of Hall of Fame offensive linemen, they were going to cry like, oh my God, why we signed this guy? Oh. The Hall of Fame linemen don't usually get to free agency, and when you do, you pay them $10, $12 million a year. So when Bills fans bitch and moan, again, I didn't think much of the fucking Jordan Poyer signing. Turns out he's a good player. Turns out he almost pretty much played at a Pro Bowl level last year. Jason Peters was traded. You know, granted, they picked Eric Wood with the pick, but all the turnover they've had at that position, they didn't want to pay the guy, because what did the organization just do? They paid Dockery and fucking Langston Walker a bunch of money. They probably should have given a contract extension to Jason Peters, because he was that good. And that was under a different regime, a different era. Ralph Wilson was an old man, not well, in some room in Detroit, you know, rest in peace. But still, when you have absentee ownership, this is what happens. You know, maybe Ralph, Russ, who knows who's there at the time, Modrak, Jaron. I mean, shit. Russ went up to the draft podium after those picks were made in the first round and talked about him. I remember it. He was the de facto general manager in that 08 season. Ackroyd's a good guy. He comes in, he interjects some negativity, and he just wants to see the team win. But, you know, he has his own ideas and stuff. And again, that's what makes this cool. That's what makes this fun. That's what makes this interactive, is that I don't want everybody to have the same ideas as me. You can say, Mark, You know, and I'm not one of those assholes going to kick you out. I'm not one of these people that's going to tell you I know so much more than you do, and oh, I have this big opinion about football, and you don't know what you're talking about, and I'm going to kick you out of my room or I'm going to block you. No. Yeah, it was terrible. It was bargain basement, and then hopefully they're coming out of that. I mean, look what it took for the Pagulas to wake up. It took a year and a half of Rex Ryan and embarrassing them on a multitude of levels. Doug Whaley embarrassing them, Russ Brandon embarrassing them, to just wake up and be like, hey, we got to get rid of these people. We got to get rid of these people. He's a solid coach. He was very much a player's coach. And Wade's a defensive coordinator. Wade can be a head coach for a year or so, but he's not a guy I think Wade is what he is. He's a really good defensive coordinator. I honestly feel like he's the de facto head coach with the Rams right now, because for the genius that McVay got tagged with, he got exposed bad. And I think he got exposed as being an offensive coordinator, masquerading around as a head coach. Yeah, you can't deny his defense. His defense showed up to play. They held New England for 10 points for 59 minutes. They held New England to 10 points for 59 minutes, and they needed their mighty offense to make one play. Their genius offensive, and he bitched out. They all bitched out. Yeah, he did. He got him there, and they came close to winning. I feel like they might even gone to they might have ended up in Indianapolis and won the game there. Who knows? That would have been fun. I felt like they should have won in Miami the year prior. It sucked, you know. But what are you gonna do? He got them there two out of the 3 years he coached. Actually, he was the head coach from 98, 99 to 2000. Marv Levy was 97, and they didn't go to the playoffs in 97. They went in 96. And that was Jacksonville winning in Buffalo. Yeah, Goff and their head coach lost in that game. But let me ask all you guys individually. Individually, you can answer. Give me your wet dream first round pick, your wet dream free agency signing. I don't really have one, but I know you guys have your thoughts. If you want to just type them in there, I'll read them out and then, you know, see who likes what. I just want to see where your guys' head's at, just to make it fun. And then this will be the last thing I do for night. Your wet dream first round pick. I mean, I'm more about third and fourth and fifth round picks because I like those guys. I think those guys can end up being players. Defensive, you got to give me names. You can't give me like those are pretty broad terms. A defensive, an ass kicker, pass rusher. Ed Oliver. It's tough, right? Imagine being up there to make that decision. Imagine being up there to be the guy like, okay, I really got to pick this guy. I feel like if I'm there and Oliver checks out medically, he checks out in their interviews. I've seen his talent. I don't think he'll be there, Trevor, but it's your wet dream. Thought we were equal, Josh Allen or Marquise Brown. See, I think Marquise Brown is going to be a first-round pick, man. I think he's going to be a first-round pick. We've seen guys like a DJ Moore who can run, take the top off of defense. John Ross hasn't really panned out in Cincinnati, but we've seen that guy all of a sudden became a top 10 pick, because when you have an ability to make a defense go from being this to this, because they have to worry about you getting behind them and running them ragged, they have to respect you. That guy's a premium pick. Draft Josh Allen, free agent Croft. See, I mean, I think that I think Josh Allen will be gone by the time the Bills pick. Like I'm just being honest. I think he's gone. I think he's gone in the top 4 or 5 picks. he's going to be gone along with Bosa. I don't know about everybody. I don't know if Quinnen Williams is there. I don't think he's going to be there. I think he'll be gone before the Bills pick also. And if they trade down, obviously they're picked. My wet dream is they trade down and they take a game changer on offense, whether it's a guy like Hawkinson who can move, who can play the regular tight end position, a Y, block and catch, and it just be a mismatch piece on offense, or Marquise Brown who can return punts, who can take the top off of defense. He reminds me so much of Deshaun Jackson. It's not even funny. He just a smooth, fast runner. Free agency, yeah, I'm with you, Trevor. Just steady eddies. Give me the steady eddy. I don't need sizzle. I want substance. I want guys who come in, do their job. Let the Micah Hydes of the world, the Jordan Poyers of the world. Those are the guys I like. I mean, granted, they've proven out, but Micah Hyde, we were all like the signing of Micah Hyde. We knew he was a solid player from Green Bay. He's been everything and that in Buffalo. Everything. No way, man. No way. I don't think that you'll see that guy in that Bills uniform. No, and I just want to say Hollywood Brown. I'll be honest, I'm selfish. I want to call Bills fans will come up with a cool nickname for TJ Hawkinson. Hawk. Like that's just, they'll do something cool with that. That's what Bills fans are. If they draft a defensive player, I just want to see a guy who can get after the passer, and that would be Ed Oliver. If they stay at 9, Ed Oliver. If they trade back, Hawkinson or Brown. Those are my guys. And in free agency, if I have my druthers, had a couple of guys. I'd want one more offensive lineman that's starting caliber. One more offensive lineman starting caliber. I don't even know if it's a tackle. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here thinking. Not Earl Thomas. We have safeties. Wow, it's tough. I would like to see I want to see some guys get released first. I just really, the free agency class doesn't wow me. It doesn't move me. But if they sign a Greg Robinson, I'd be on board with that. If they didn't have to give a lot of money to Trent Brown, I would be on board with that. If they don't have to go in the $7 million range, I'd be excited about that. I think they need a veteran receiver, though. I really do. I don't think you can just count on a rookie. I think you need to bring in a veteran receiver. And again, I think you have to wait for some guys to get released. And that's DeMarcus Lawrence, but they're going to franchise him. So I'm not even thinking about him because everything I've heard, Dallas is going to franchise him, and he's going to get elite pass rusher, 18, 17, $19 million money. That's out of my hands. The reason I when I talk about pass rusher and I bring up Ed Oliver is I feel like you can move him around. He's a guy that's not subject, you have to stick him at defensive tackle, and that's it. I think he can play end. I think he can play end in rundowns if you want him to. He's that athletic. He's that fluid. He's that flexible. He can bend and get low, and then you could kick him inside. You can just do a lot of stuff with him in the front four. That's why I think if they stay there, he would be great, because I think that's what we know. They like to occasionally rush their linebackers, safety blitz, or they just want their pass rushers to go. Their front four, if they have their druthers, they have a good enough front four to rush, and they just play coverage in the back. That's what they want to do. And Pittsburgh is about to beat Edmond 3-1. They'll probably pick up a veteran corner. If they get Darrell Williams, I think he got hurt. I don't know. I just know there's going to be a segment of Bills fans who bitch and moan about his Carolina ties. I don't know how good he is or isn't. I don't know if he wants an okay deal. If he wants a 1-year deal, the $3 or $4 million, okay. If they like Williams, they like Williams. That's the cool thing, man, about this draft. I think corners are good. There's Jojuan Williams. I think he's a good Baker. Rashard Baker was amazing. Jim Thorpewater. He's always around the ball. Always making plays on the ball, whether it's he's breaking up passes or intercepting passes or nearly getting interceptions. He's really good in the run game. They don't have to stay at 9 and get a good player. They can drop back and get a good player, and I want them to drop back and get a second round pick, and use it to drop back again, and pick up something next year. I want them to have picks in the mid rounds as many as possible, because I think that's where you can get really, really good players, and if they do that, then you can take your game changer on offense, like Brown or Hawkinson. That's my wet dream. Yeah, but what are you trading for him? He's in the last year of his deal. He's 31. He's coming off surgery. He's a really, really good player. He's really, really good when he's healthy. What do they want for him? I'm not giving up a second round pick for a 31-year-old wide receiver who's making as much money. Trade Julio, but who says they're going to trade Julio when they just signed him to a big deal? They just signed Julio Jones, I think, to a deal, no? And if they can get like another second round pick from a team, we see it all the time. All of a sudden, Marcus Davenport, the Saints traded up to take him and gave up their first round pick this year to Green Bay for Marcus Davenport. Was he a guy that everybody felt like they needed going into the 18 draft? Who knows? We don't know how. That's the cool thing about the draft, is we don't know how. I'm not a fan of Tevin Coleman. He's in and out. He's not very. He's okay, but he's as a running back, he's hurt a lot, and he's inconsistent. And I want young, fresh legs. I want young, hungry guys, bro. I don't want guys that are coming in on deals that maybe there were pieces in other places, and now that I want hungry guys at running back. I want guys who want to run hard and just not worry about their carries, but when they get opportunities, make the most of them. I don't want to worry about guys like, hey, I got my money now. I'm kind of like I'm in between mode. I don't know if I have to work as hard. Yeah, Sanu could be available, and he could be a solid guy. See, there, Eric, that's a good thought. Like you, I like where your head's at, and I think he's a solid player. He's a really solid player. He's underrated. Dante Fowler, see, there's a guy, he got in trouble in Jacksonville. He had that incident. He's kind of a boisterous guy. Seems like a me guy. Talked about it. I don't know. I don't know if they take him, and I don't think he's a really dynamic pass rusher. Yeah, find it. Yeah, Snarls, find it back in the third round. Find this year's Kareem Hunt minus the off the field issues. Find this year's Phillip Lindsay. Why can't the Bills do that? Whether it's a Miles Sanders or a David Montgomery or what have you, one of those guys. Go after them. You get your tight end, whether it's a Josh Oliver from San Diego, I think it's San Jose State or San Diego State, one of those mid-round guys that's really, really solid, dynamic, or the kid from Texas A&M, or if you draft Hawkinson in the first round, you don't need to do that. Yeah, just build a team that way. I want humbled warriors who just go in and do their job. No fuss, no muss, no I'm rah. Even though I want the Bills to draft a guy named Hollywood. And yes, Ed Oliver did kind of sit out on his team. I know that. So I'm kind of like, I can't have both. I'm kind of talking get Gronk, big old ox. I think Gronk's retiring, man. I think Gronk is gonna finally call it a day. I think he got his Super Bowl. I don't think it's his third or his second. He's second Super Bowl, and this is it. Call it Dante. It's gonna be weird, man. We'll see what they do, but I really appreciate all you guys coming in. Hour and 15 minutes just shooting the shit. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. I got everything. I meant to come on earlier because I got all my shit done early today. I got work, all my cooking, all my gym, everything. So yeah, I really appreciate it. Jared Cook came off a good year, but he's 32. He's 32. I know one thing. McDermott says he wants a veteran guy in certain rooms. The one room or two rooms I see where that's not really obvious right now is offensive line and wide receiver. Tight end also. So maybe there is a guy out there. I don't know if it's Cook. Don't know if Cook's a guy that they like. But I just know he says he likes certain types of veterans in each room. Obviously Derek Anderson, Eric Wood was that guy for the offensive line. Another reason, and that goes by the wayside. Dante Fowler, not a fan. Not a fan. I'd rather them just draft a guy. And you got last year Shaq Lawson, Hughes, Trent Murphy. Let's see what he looks like fully healthy. I think he was a little ambitious trying to come back off that ACL. Hopefully he's better this time around than he was in his first year. Picked up 4 sacks, missed 6 games, but you still got to see what you have there after signing the guy just 1 year in. You can't cut bread now. It shows no long-term foresight or vision. Just shows haphazard spending, knee-jerk reactions. Otherwise, yeah, Royds. If he did have the suspension. I don't. He's obviously, once you fail the test, you go into the testing program. They can test you year-round. They can show up wherever. And I think they do use USADA, and if you don't show up or meet the USADA testers, that's an automatic fail, and you violate the rules of the collective bargaining agreement. You get suspended. So far so good. A lot of these guys are, man. That's how they get to where they are. They love working out. They love it. That's just that's how they get to play football. They gotta like working out, gotta like running. You see a lot of guys who are good at playing football, they lose their love of working out and stuff, and it leaves them, because your talent can only take you so far. You still gotta like to maintain it and elevate it as much as you can. All right, guys, take care. Have a great one. Thanks for coming on so long. An hour and 20 minutes. You guys who hung with me, there was like 13, 14, but again, even if there's just one of you, I really, really appreciate it. Trevor, Damager, Snarl, Eric, Christian, I don't want to miss anybody. Trevor, all you guys, I really, really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, Matthew. And hell, who knows what happens tomorrow, right? You guys have a good one. Take care. Go Bills. I'm out of breath. I need more cardio. Shit.